So welcome today to this webinar. First of all, I'd like to tell you very quickly about the ASCCT. We are a new society. It's the American Society for Cellular and Computational Toxicology, as you can see from the screen. We were founded in 2010 by a coalition of nonprofits and for-profit companies with an interest in promoting the use of alternative testing strategies to animals for toxicology. That includes in vitro and in silico methods. We have an annual meeting in the fall, usually in Washington, D.C., and we have this webinar program. The webinar program is usually for members, and we decided to open it up to everybody so that everybody could learn about the Cosmos project and the work that they've been doing. But we have webinars every couple of months, and we archive all of them for information. They're on a broad variety of topics. Membership is $50 a year or $20 for students. We really try to encourage students to get involved as well. And we have a website. It's www.ascctalks.org, which you can see on the screen, where you can find lots more information. A couple of administrative details. As you have heard, everybody's line is muted, and the presentation is being recorded. If you're having any trouble, the best way to tell me is either by email at the email there on the screen, which will change. The screen will change, so write that email down in case you need it later, of course, while the presentation is going on. And you can also you direct a chat to me. There's a little chat bubble that you can see, and you can use that to tell me if you have a question or are having trouble hearing or anything. For the question and answer session, which will be after the presentation, I will unmute everyone's line so that we can hear the questions. If you could do a favor, and if you're not asking a question or talking, please mute yourself manually, either with your phone, if you're calling in by phone, or by clicking the little microphone icon to mute yourself. That would be really appreciated. You can also ask questions during the Q&A by chat. And the recording of the video of the webinar will be available afterwards. You can also try disconnecting and then reconnecting if you're having trouble hearing. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our presenter. The presenter is Professor Mark Cronin from the School of Pharmacy and Biomolecular Sciences at Liverpool John Moores University. He's the project coordinator for the Cosmos project as well, which aims to develop alternatives for repeat dose testing for cosmetics. And he has a long research career and has published over 200 articles and 3 books on the use of QSARs and expert systems to predict toxicology. So we're very pleased to have Mark and some of his team here to present the Cosmos database, which they've been working on for a short while now. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and Mark, you should be able to, because you're presenter, you should be able to go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, thank you very much, Christy. Can you see the first slide, a title slide?
Do
I need to do?
Ooh. I'm sorry about that. Try again. I shared my screen by accident.
Okay, sorry. I'll try again. I'll try and show the title slide again. You should see a slide that says Cosmos DB, a new database of toxicological information.
I see, I don't see that.
Okay. Let me go back. I have a for fuzz meeting. It says now launching for me.
Okay.
Um, I had the full uh, screen before. If the reason does, I will click here. Oh, I don't know whether I apologize. Oh, there's the screen there. Let me try again. Can you see it now, Christy? The slide. Is there something I
No,
should be? Is there something
I
I? Is there something I should be doing?
um you should be able to share desktop. Did you select that?
Okay, I've got that. Sorry, I hadn't done that.
There we go.
I apologise for that, ladies and gentlemen. Okay,
That's
thank you
okay.
very much. I hope you can all see the slides. Please let Christy know if you can't. I apologise for the slight delay there. Good afternoon from Liverpool, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Mark Cronin from Liverpool in England. And firstly, I'd like to thank Christy for the invitation and the opportunity to speak, and particularly the American Society for Cellular and Computational Toxicology for allowing us to tell you a little bit about the Cosmos project and the Cosmos database through this webinar. Just to give you some background or some information about what I'll be talking about, I'm just going to put into place how the Cosmos project came to be with regard to European regulation and its role within the SURAC cluster. Then we'll get to the heart of the presentation, which is the Cosmos database in terms of the chemistry it contains and the toxicity data. Then we'll talk about how we can search the database, and I'll attempt a demonstration. And that will show you the search options and the types of data and detail of data within the database. And then we'll talk a little bit about how to create knowledge from Cosmos database and where we're going with this and the future plans. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for questions at the end. Before I start, it's very important to note that I am only a small part of Cosmos. I lead Cosmos. As we'll see, it's a major European level project, and the work on Cosmos database has been performed by many of the partners. And in particular, I'd like to thank Jihei Yang and her team at Altamira in Columbus, Dan Yagu at the University of Bradford in England, everyone at Molecular Networks in Erlangen, who have really created the database and the infrastructure. Other thanks as well to the US FDA for the donations of the series database and PAFA, also Procter & Gamble for some of the chemical structures and also data, and many other people who have worked and contributed to the database. So I'm simply describing it, but please don't be under the impression that this is completely my project and results of my work. It really is a collaborative effort. So the context of how we came to start the Cosmos project really starts with European level legislation, which many of you will be familiar with, and particularly the cosmetics products regulation, which started with banning animal testing of finished cosmetic products some 10 years ago, and has more recently moved to the ban of marketing of products with ingredients tested on animals for some endpoints after 2009 and for all other effects and endpoints after 2013. And we're just coming up to the first anniversary of that ban. With the ban on testing ingredients, there was a long appreciation of the need for other methods to undertake safety assessment of cosmetic ingredients and other products. In Europe, this is also in the context of other regulation we have, for instance, the REACH regulation, which is for existing chemicals, and also in the context of much interest in reducing animal testing according to the 3R principles, and the whole situation we're in with moving toxicology forward towards the aims of 21st century toxicology and better alternative methods for safety assessment. So many of these factors spawn the need for further research into these areas, and within Europe one of the key outputs of that is the SURAT cluster. And this is a major European initiative, SURAT standing for Safety Evaluation, ultimately replacing animal testing. And SURAT is intended to be a long-term initiative that could go on through many cycles. SURAT 1 is what I'm going to tell you a small amount about today, which aims to replace in vivo repeated dose systemic toxicity testing. And I'll just tell you about a small amount of progress to it. On the right hand side of the slide, you'll see the structure of the SURAT cluster. And SURAT is made up of 6 research projects, ranging from the use of in vitro assays, biomarkers, bioreactors, stem cells, and also ToxBank, which is a data warehousing project, in addition to the Cosmos project, which I'll just briefly tell you about, which is what we coordinate, Cosmos being involved with computational models. We also have a coordinating project called COACH, and they provide scientific advice and direction to us. The funding of the complete SURAT 1 project is through a public-private initiative. So funded 25 million euros from the European Commission through the FP7 programme, and another 25 million euros from Cosmetics Europe, which is the main trade association for the largest cosmetics manufacturers. More information on SURAT is available at the website at the bottom of this screen, and this includes a very weighty annual report which you can download pages, and we're just in the preparation of the 4th of those annual reports, and they will tell you much more about the results from the whole SURAT 1 project, the aims, and how this fits into initiatives such as the adverse outcome pathway initiatives. In total, these are large projects, and in total there are some 70 research groups from European universities, research institutes, with a large proportion of SMEs. I'm just going to focus on the Cosmos project, and our website is shown there. We're now entering the 4th of 5 years of the Cosmos project. And this is a 6.7 million euro project, and coordinated by ourselves in Liverpool with 14 other partners. We have 2 partners in the US, which is Altamira and the US FDA, as well as partners across Europe, down to Sofia in Bulgaria. We also have as a partner the Joint Research Centre, the European Commission's Joint Research Centre in Isbra, and their computational chemistry group. More specifically, the Cosmos project aims to develop computational models to assist in the replacement of animal testing for repeat dose toxicity data. I'm going to talk in this presentation about the Cosmos database, which is one important component of the project itself. Other work within Cosmos, which we're not specifically presenting today, includes an update of the threshold of toxicological concern with emphasis on cosmetic ingredients, and that is closely linked, as we'll see, to the development of the Cosmos database, and one of the main motivations for it, and the cosmetics inventory. This work is nearing completion now. We've also done a large amount of work on in silico models, which have ranged from the development of structural alerts and chemotypes through to QSAR models for toxicity and also for permeability, through to what are now three-dimensional molecular modeling approaches for AOPs related to organ level toxicity. And also a large component of the Cosmos project and leading into many of the other SURAT projects is the integration of PBPK modeling and in vitro and vivo extrapolation to allow for a prediction of or an extrapolation from in vitro assays and effects and perturbation of pathways through to how that will be represented at a organ level effect. Now, unfortunately, I do not have sufficient time today to talk about these other aspects. Please be aware, and there is a lot of work going on in other parts of the Cosmos project, and we're integrating with other areas of SURAT and indeed other European and US projects. But today I'm going to focus on the development of the Cosmos database, and I'll tell you a little more about that and hopefully give you a demonstration of it. So, to give you an idea why we feel there is a need for a new inventory and toxicity data storage capability, I'll just describe some of the motivations. First of all, with regard to the threshold of toxicological concern, one of the main interests in this project was to extend the current paradigm through to make it more focused on the needs of cosmetic ingredients. To do that, we needed a proper and full inventory of cosmetics ingredients associated with high quality chemical structures. And I use this term high quality chemical structures quite often, by which I mean we've got good confidence that the chemical structures in our database are correct, they're associated with a correct identifier, name, smile strings and so forth, so that the user can have some confidence when they search by chemical structure. So that was one of our key motivations, and I'll tell you a little bit about our cosmetic ingredients inventory. That provided the platform for extending TTC for cosmetics. As I say, I'm not going to say any more about the results from TTC. That work is approaching completion. But then also we wanted to create a source and a place to collect quality control data, focusing here on repeat dose toxicity and particularly on cosmetics related substances. And it's important this time to remember throughout this presentation that this project is funded 50% by Cosmetics Europe and the cosmetics industry, and also as a response to the cosmetics regulation. So you will see, and we must remember there will be a bias towards cosmetic related ingredients here. Now we have a platform for collecting toxicity data together. We wish to have a platform, or we wish to be able to create knowledge by searching those data and those organ level effects, and being able to compile knowledge from that. And should time allow, I will just give you a little example of that and the kinds of depth of information we have within Cosmos DB at the end. That's not to say, of course, that there are not already excellent existing databases. And I've just listed a few here on this slide. One of the most well-known databases of repeat dose data is the RepDose database from the Fraunhofer Institute in Hanover. More recently, we have from the National Institute of Technology and Evaluation in Tokyo the HEST database, the Hazard Evaluation Support System database, repeat dose toxicity database, and associated software. Also, if you download the OECD QSAR toolbox, you'll find many repeat dose data within there. However, none of these databases have focused specifically on cosmetics ingredients, and in addition, some of the things we wanted to do, in particular, be able to profile chemicals and search down to understand the relationship between chemical structure and organ level effects, were not necessarily possible within these databases. So that was one of the key motivations for a new way of collecting toxicity data. As well, with regard to the chemical inventory, there are at least two inventories of cosmetics ingredients. Within Europe, we have the COSING inventory, and outside of Europe, from the US, there's the PCPC inventory of cosmetics ingredients. And within the Cosmos database, our cosmetics ingredients inventory has combined the information for single substances from these two sources. And I'll show you a little bit more about how that's managed during the demonstration. So we've now released the first version 1 of Cosmos DB. This was released in December of 2013, and this webinar is one of our ways of promoting the Cosmos DB and also trying to promote an understanding of what's in it and how it can be used. The web link is there, and we'll give you a demonstration in a moment. And you have the capability through the web link of freely searching the database. Hopefully we'll show you how to browse complex data for organ level toxicity, and also generate specific reports. I don't think I'll have time to cover that today, but that option is there. I'm not going to spend much time talking about the technology of the database today. My understanding is that most of you listening in are toxicologists, are risk assessors, and want to use the database. Suffice to say that the database is built up of open access technology, particularly through the efforts of Altamira and Molecular Networks. My colleagues from those businesses, if you do want technical information, can supply that afterwards. The database, as we'll see, contains high quality toxicity data, and I'll talk a little bit more about quality control and structure curation. And we'll look at, in the demonstration, the query builder to search the database, which goes beyond the typical put a chemical structure in, get something out. And as we're alluding to there, it's enabling us to search for toxicity data along with chemistry as well. To use Cosmos DB, we ask you to register for a free account. This is simply just going to the registration port there and setting up an individual login and password associated with an email address. This takes a couple of seconds, and the reason we're doing this is not to make this into a commercial product later on, and certainly not as a to collect email addresses for spam. But this is in common with many similar databases such as RepDosa and the OECD QSAR Toolbox, and allows us to contact users should we need to with regard to updates and other information about the database. Please be assured that the level of emails you will receive from us will be minimal. And it will simply be when there are very important issues to alert you to. So, for instance, when we have updates to the database or other extremely important pieces of information. Once you're logged in, there is a facility to change your password and indeed log out. So, a little bit about what's in the database. The first thing is to describe briefly the Cosmos cosmetics inventory, and this includes information on over some 5,500 substances, and these are ingredients and previous cosmetics related materials, which of course can include banned substances. The Cosmos Cosmetics inventory has been pulled together from the COSING inventory and the kind donation of the PCPC inventory, and we believe it's one of the most complete in this sense. It includes information on the uses, and in the pie chart on the left of your screen you'll see our top 6 use categories in terms of the the structures and substances represented. So about a third of the substances relate to skin conditioning and moisturizing, large numbers of surfactants, perfumes, and so forth, and a reasonable number of hair dyes. And on the right, we have a summary of the chemical classes, and all this information is within the database. And again, the chemical classes represent quite a number of long chain aliphatics, so the oils, alcohols, amines, and reasonable numbers of other classes. This information, particularly on chemical classes, has been particularly useful to us in order to determine the suitability of data and the chemical space of cosmetic ingredients, particularly with reference to the TTC. So that's the Cosmos Cosmetic Inventory, and if a compound is related to within that, that is highlighted, and we'll see that in the demonstration. The content of Cosmos DB itself, it's important to understand the distinctions we have here. There are over 80,000 IDs, so there is information on over 80,000 substances. Now, when I say substances, that can include mixtures, oils, and other cosmetic type compounds. Within that 80,000, there are some 44,000, just over 44,000 unique chemical structures. So the difference between those two numbers represents the mixtures, the oils, and the other ingredients such as natural products. We have our Cosmos Cosmetics Inventory with inky names and chemical functions. And many of you will be interested in the number of toxicity data. So for 1,660 compounds, we have data across 27 endpoints, and we'll see a few of those. For about 12,500 separate studies. Specifically within Cosmos and the repeat dose toxicity data, we've undergone a harvesting program which has created the O-repeat, the oral repeat toxicity database for some 230 cosmetics related chemicals from 340 studies, and we'll see some of the results from that in the demonstration and the detail it goes into. We've also had a donation of the USDA FDA PAFA, that's the Priority Based Assessment of Food Additives database, and again you'll see those results coming up. And further data will be added both through data harvesting and through agreements with other partners, and I'm not going to say any more on that at this moment. I would, however, just like to emphasize some aspects of quality control and curation, particularly with regard to both the chemical structures, which we describe on this slide, and the toxicity data. For the structures, and note this is the chemistry, the chemical structure, a curation strategy was agreed between the FDA, the EPA, and we're very grateful to Anne Richards and her team there for help, and Altamira to develop the curation strategy. This has allowed for a quality control process through our input of data and researching of the structures within the Cosmos database. And we've done work on QA statistics, and we accept that there will always be error within databases until we put vast amounts of resources in them, and we have some idea here of the error rates which you can see there, which are quite minimal within our random sample of structures. In terms of toxicity data, another large amount of curation, QC and QA, has been undergone, and I've got a couple of slides on that which is summarized here. Data have been harvested particularly from the start of the Cosmos project until the middle of last year, and the quality control process was undertaken applying the Minis criteria, which was developed by toxicologists under the supervision of FDA. And the next slide, or a future slide, the next slide, I just defined the Minis criteria in a little more detail. Again, we have QA statistics for the recently harvested data, the O-repeat tox DB, where 4 studies were reharvested, checked, and information about errors and missing records was included. So more information on the data curation strategy for toxicity data, and this is termed the MINIs, the minimum study criteria. And there's several aspects to this. Firstly, in terms of the quality of the data themselves, so the study reports, in terms of how reliable they are, in terms with regard to accuracy and the completeness of the study report that's been included into the database. And secondly, with regard to the acceptability of the results. So in terms of data accuracy, the database content was checked by the staff entering the data and toxicologists, and data completeness was assessed using the so-called MINIs criteria, which means it was given a grade along according to whether it meets the guidelines, non-guideline, but meets our own criteria, or does not meet criteria at all. And this was assigned at the harvesting stage. And data acceptance was determined during the review sessions, and particularly assigning, as you'll see, Klimisch scores, the well-known Klimisch scores, to individual studies. We'll get to the demonstration in a minute. Just to confirm that searching the database, we have a number of search criteria, names, CAS numbers, other identifiers and structures. And we can search for exact structures, partial structures, or similar structures. I'll attempt to show you some of that. Not only can we search for chemistry, but we can also search for toxicity, and I'll give you an example of how we can do that. So find all compounds with a particular effect. And we can combine the two together. So we can combine, I'll try and undertake a search for a particular piece of chemistry, identifying similar compounds with associated toxicity that we can specify. So I'll move over now to a demonstration, and just for future reference, as the presentation is being recorded, this is the information I'll run through now. So hopefully, if I return to my web browser, hopefully you should now see a web browser showing the entry into the Cosmos database. Now I have obviously pre-registered and I've logged in. This is the entry screen you'll see, and I'm going to go into database search in a moment, and but just two further things that will come up. One is the computational methods, particularly for prediction of properties, which is coming in the future, and a data entry scheme for, or system, data entry system for those of us permitted to enter data into the database, which will be carefully controlled. We have links to Cosmos Space, which is a facility for us to share, which we will use towards the end of the Cosmos project to share data and to share models, and also a link to our sister project ToxBank, which is part of the SURAT project with whom we're collaborating in terms of data warehousing. Okay, so I've registered. I'm just going to do a quick database search. I simply click on the database and you immediately see the different ways in which we can enter a structure. I'm going to, just to illustrate these, I'm just going to search on paraben, and you'll see as you type in that it will make suggestions for you. I'm just going to see how many compounds contain the word paraben in our database, and just by pressing search, and I just need to clear. I was using this earlier, so I'm just going to clear on the right here. So if I search now, it now searches the database and it finds what information it has with regard to the parabens. Now remember that we have over 80,000 chemical substances listed and 44,000 structures, but fewer toxicity data. So what we have here are the list of all our entries of parabens, and you'll see it has entries for over 36 different parabens. And we'll come back and look at the toxicity data in a minute. So that's the first search criterion. I can then search on, I will clear that, can then search on using different identifiers. There's a Cosmos ID number or a DSS Tox ID. If we go to the CAS number, I'll just put in a CAS number 5989275, and you'll see that we have a confirmation here that we have it. And I'll search on this. And this finds limonene, and we'll come back to limonene in a minute. So here we have the entry for limonene, and I'll come back and show you more about that in a couple of minutes. We can also search by sketching in a molecule. I will clear the CAS number. We can search by sketching in a molecule. If we go to sketch, I'm going to press add molecule. We get a very simple and easy to use drawing scheme. I'm just going to put phenol in. And even if you're not familiar with this drawing tool, it's very easy to use. I'll just press OK. I could edit that molecule and add further bits in if I want, and I can either search exactly for phenol or similar molecules, and at this point I'm just going to do a partial search. And what this is now going to do is search the database and see how many compounds contain this particular structure. And here we see the results, and actually it's quite an impressive number. It's over 10,200 hits. So we have over 10,200 structural entries for our query, and if I click on the first, you'll see that within this structure it does actually have a phenolic group, although it's substituted. Now clearly 10,000 is an impractical number to consider. So at this point, we need to trim this search down. And finally, I'm just going to consider similarity searching. And to do that, I'll clear this first. And I'm just going to use put a smile string in. Many or most of you will be familiar with smile strings for hydroquinone, which can just be typed in or paste in. And I'm going to use the similarity function. And this is based on a Tanimoto coefficient. And I'm just going to say somewhat similar. These are objective or subjective similarity searches. And here now we get about 15 compounds that are found to be similar structurally, only in terms of structure, with hydroquinone itself. So you can use the database to search for chemical structures and what we have on chemical structures. And let's now have a look more specifically about the information that's there. So I'm going back to the compound I entered earlier, which was for limonene, which I entered as the CAS number. And here's our compound limonene, and the first thing we can see is there is information from 42 studies for this compound. If we click on the compound, we get to the entry for this compound. And let's see what we have. So under names and identifiers, we have the CAS number, we have the Cosing reference, the DSS Tox reference, and some of the preferred and required names of this substance. Under compound annotations, this is now going to give us information about the cosmetic use. So it's used as the flavor and the use functions, its masking. We have a link here, and that should open into the Cosing database, which gives the definitions for all these functions, these use functions here. So this is just the standard Cosing database. We also have a link, direct link to the cosing entry for limonene itself. So if I click on this, this will now take me to the link for limonene on the cosing inventory itself. And again, I won't use this. This is an external website to the Cosmos DB, but within the cosmetic inventory, it could be highly useful. We also have information donated from PAFA and Red Book information, and also as flavors and the regulation information. And what most of us will be interested in today are the toxicity data. And to access the toxicity data for this substance, we can see that we have entries from the PAFA database and also the O-Repeat toxicity database. So O-Repeat Tox DB, of course, are the ones that have been harvested within the Cosmos project. And I'm just going to open the database here, and it's done on a tree basis. So target organ toxicity, we have subchronic data, and we have, if we open the mouse data, we'll see information about the reliability of the data, and then going down, drilling down into the specific information about the dose range. And again, if I click on that, you can see that this gives information about specific doses, the information contained within the data, and for some examples you'll see much more information than this, and the dose levels at which we see an effect. So at a dose of 1000 mg per kg per day, we're beginning to see some signs of toxicity. We also have taken from the dose information for many of the data information on the low AL, and that describes the low AL. It states the value and it states the information on which that decision has been derived. So that's the level of data, some of the level of data which is already included for the repeated dose toxicity data. So we can look here, so that just gives us an illustration of how we can look at specific chemicals. And with time in mind, I'm going to just now give you an illustration of how we can combine a search for chemistry with a search for particular toxicity data. So at this point I'm going to draw in our molecule phenol and do a partial search here. So if remember, there are over 10,000 entries for phenol, but now I'm going to go to the right hand side to be able to search for particular toxicity data. So in order to do that, we can now combine a search for chemistry with a search for particular data. So now I can search, and indeed you don't need to include chemistry here. If I had time, we could just do this without chemistry, so we could find all data for liver endpoints. This gives you a list of the data that are in and the number of studies within the Cosmos DB. I'm going to look at subchronic toxicity here. We get some further options. I could pare down in terms of species and strain and routes, and I'm just going to at this point consider liver toxicity. So this is now a query that's asking what compounds do we have in the database that have the phenolic structure within the compound and have subchronic toxicity data with effects at the liver. So this is combining both the chemistry search with toxicity data or toxicity search here. And just to repeat, I don't have time, but we could simply do the search in terms of toxicity here. So I could search here without a chemical structure. So now if I search, we can now see that we have 50 compounds with a phenolic structure that contain some reference to liver toxicity. And that reference may be that simply there is no effects recorded. And if we click on one of them, again, you'll now recognize that the way this is presented. We have data from PAFA and data we've collected ourselves from as part of the O repeat tox database. And if I just open up the rat data here, so remember we've looked for a phenolic compound, a compound with a phenolic structure in, which we have. And if I open up the data here, we can see now for this compound, the sets of results, and as we go down the information for this single compound, we can see at this dose level there, 100 mg per kg. Hopefully you can see now that we're beginning to see information about the liver, and we're beginning to see information about potential lesions. And as we go down, we have captured more and further information about the particular effects. So a large amount of information there. Now there's much more to show about Cosmos DB, but with time in mind, I'm going to return to the presentation and just show you one or two things to finish off. The first is that we can use the depth of knowledge that's held within Cosmos DB, and there's some figures here for the kind of information that we've harvested in terms of the O repeat tox database, so body weight parameters for 211 chemicals, 36 target organs covering 120 sites, and so forth. Many phenotypic lesions associated with different organs, and particular emphasis on liver toxicity. To give you some idea of the organs and the organ information level, the organ level information contained within Cosmos, here we have a summary of the organs by species. So we have most information for the oral repeat dose toxicity data for the rats, followed by mouse and dog, and inevitably most information on the liver and kidney, but also quite a lot for stomach and spleen. I'm going to skip these slides, and I apologize, and just end by saying how we can use this information. In the slides I've just skipped over, it illustrates that the depth of information we have about organ level toxicity and how we can bring that out, and also the way that is organized down to cellular level and effects on particular systems and tissues. Work at Altamira that's going on at the moment is now mining that information to get information out. So through these toxicity related database searches, we can identify particular pathologies and particular effects associated with chemistry, and then relate those to chemical structures. And this is through the development of chemotypes, through again some more freely available software made available from Altamira and the US FDA, that's enabling us to capture chemical structures, these so-called chemotypes, associated with, in this particular example, liver toxicity, so steatosis, steatohepatitis, and fibrosis. And that's one way in which we're using Cosmos DB, not only to capture information, but to create knowledge in terms of chemistry and chemical structures from it. Okay, there's much more to say about Cosmos, but our future plans, this will not be a static database. We have content updates this year. We will have a further release in the summer of this year, which will include a skin permeability database, the Cosmos TTC dataset, and an update to the oral toxicity data. For those of us involved in data entry, the data entry system will become live, and as will calculation of properties and batch handling. And one thing we're very conscientious of is that this is not going to end at the end of Cosmos. So we're putting a lot of effort into legacy and sustainability, and particularly we will work with Cosmetics Europe and other stakeholders to ensure that this becomes a future platform. And this is a flexible platform, and it can be used to capture and create many other types of toxicity data and many other endpoints. So, in summary, one further question we're also asked is with regard to the release of the data themselves. And I think we need to bear in mind that the Cosmos database is under the final phase of development, quality assurance, and quality control. And currently, the database, as you find it, will give you open access to the data, search the data, and mine the data. When the current round of Cosmos DB is finalized, then the data will be made freely available as standalone files. So they will be made available, but because the curation process is still ongoing, we're not yet able to do that. So in summary, Cosmos DB is an open access database. It provides us with cosmetics inventory, and also a large number of toxicity data and toxicological information. We see the uses of Cosmos DB both to support risk assessment, but also to capture and analyze knowledge. And this goes well beyond anything we've spoken about today. This will support our efforts in grouping and support and capture the information for TTC. It will also support 21st century toxicology, and we're linking this into development of chemotypes, particularly for AOP development. I should emphasize the high standards of QA and QC that have undergone to do this, to create the database, and also that those are legacies now that we can input in further Cosmos updates. And there is a real capacity here for future growth, and this is the plans of many research groups to update the Cosmos database with other data sets and other data endpoints. I must, of course, thank the funders of Cosmos, which is the European Commission through the FP7 Cosmos project, and also Cosmetics Europe. And I welcome any questions, and you can also contact us through the email address there, and more information about the whole Cosmos project from the website there. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you, Mark. This is a really amazing resource, and I enjoyed learning more about it. We already have a couple of questions coming into the chat.
Okay.
So, the first is asking if you could say something about the differences and overlaps with the OECD toolbox.
Yes, and we haven't. I think we need to remember that the O-repeat toxicity database are newly harvested data. So there will be some overlaps between what's in Cosmos DB and the OECD toolbox. We haven't been able to map out what is in the OECD QSAR toolbox and Cosmos DB. It's not, to my understanding, possible to get the full listing of compounds legally anyway, to get the full listing of compounds within that. So remember that the focus of Cosmos DB was to support particularly risk assessment with regard to cosmetics ingredients. So that's been the focus. So certainly you will find information within Cosmos DB that is in the toolbox, but there again there will be information that is outside of the toolbox.
Okay. I'm going to open up the lines, and again, everybody, please mute yourself if you're not talking, but I just wanted to give people who are asking questions over the chat the opportunity to make sure that their questions are being answered. everybody again because that was very loud. So why don't we go ahead and just ask questions by chat? Um, okay, the next question is, are there any natural ingredients like herbal extracts?
Okay. At the moment, the data for which we have oral toxicity data are single chemical structures. The herbal extracts and the mixtures and the oils and so forth are held within the inventory, but we don't have specific toxicity data for them. But there's no reason why they couldn't be included with them, but they can't be associated with a definitive chemical structure. That's the thing we need to remember here.
Okay, we have a process question. Is it possible to save the query search in order to have a history of the search?
My understanding at the moment is that that is not yet possible. I apologize. But it is something we'd like to put in, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, can the user search the Noel value of a specific substance?
Okay, that's a very good point, and I didn't address it in the presentation. At the moment, the database contains information from the study reports and the low EL and low L values, and other information such as DNLs and HLs and LELs. We view the NOEL values as a regulatory decision, a decision made by regulators and made by toxicologists interpreting the toxicity data themselves. So the NOEL values, my understanding is, will go in with regard to the TTC dataset. The data Cosmos DB version 1, which is what you can access at this moment, does not yet have that TTC dataset within it. We're still finalizing the TTC datasets, and that's another story. So at the moment, it is up to the user to define the NOEL values themselves, and to do that, we feel that they need to be an expert toxicologist and need to have some appreciation of what the NOEL means. And also they will need to return back and they will have access to the study reports itself.
Okay. Um, there are a lot of questions.
Okay.
um, I I have a couple of flags raised, so I'm going to go ahead and try to address those. So I'm going to unmute Janice Demetrius. I don't see a way to unmute you. Did you want to ask your question?
I'm not hearing anything, Christy. Perhaps we move
No,
on.
I'm not either.
We're very happy to take these questions through the email, the info@cosmostox.eu address.
Okay. Um, so, okay. I'm gonna try. Yeah, there are quite a few questions about the types of data that are in it.
Mm-hmm.
Asking, for example, phototox, skin irritation, skin sensitization, and also whether um, dermal repeat dose studies are included. We can maybe take all
Okay,
those.
there's some easy ones to answer there. There are no, to my knowledge, skin irritation or skin sensitization data within the data set, within the database. I'm not aware of any phototox. I'll stand to be corrected on that. And very few of the, and I'm talking fewer than 10, I suspect, of the studies for repeat dose data are dermal route. Simply because we can't find them, we would welcome more dermal toxicity data.
Okay. Um, I think I can. There's a couple of questions about how whether ECHA data, ECHA REACH database is included, and also data from IFRA/RIFM and the Cosmetics Review Expert Panel publications. You can take those together.
Some of the data included are common with ECHA, but the ECHA database is not included. That would require a different agreement, obviously. But there are data in common with ECHA and REACH data where they're publicly available. And no, at the moment the RIFM data are not there. We've only included at this time publicly available data sources. So one thing I didn't mention, the SCCS and SCCP data, there's quite a large number of those data are included through the data harvesting that's undergone in Cosmos.
Okay. There's a couple of questions about the slides, whether the slides can be made available, and I think probably the best way to do that is to just email the info. If you want the slides, email the info@cosmotalks.eu email, and Mark
Yeah,
can decide if he can provide the slides.
yes, we can either provide them or put them on the Cosmos website as a download from
Yeah.
that. That may be an idea.
Okay.
That's probably the best bet, isn't it? But any questions, if people email the info at cosmostox.eu website, email address, sorry.
Okay. There's a couple of questions about how were the substructure fragments calculated?
I'm not entirely sorry. I probably need some clarification. I'll try and answer that question. Is there
Okay,
any more?
let me see if I can unmute Paul here. It was a question from Paul Price, and so let me find him. And Paul, you should be unmuted if you want to clarify your question.
Hi, this is Paul from Dow Chemical. We just want to know how the substructure fragments were calculated from these molecules. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear
Yeah,
you. And I'm wondering whether any of my colleagues from Altamira are online, whether Dimitar or we have Dimitar on the line. If you could unmute Dimitar, maybe they can answer that.
Hello.
Okay, Dimitar is unmuted.
Do you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Yep.
Okay, hi, this is Dimitar from Altamira speaking. So, if I understand, the question is about how do we perform substructure search, is that correct?
No, the fragments which you are identifying for the molecule, which are responsible for... One of the slides...
You mean towards the end, towards the end, the chemotyper slide?
Exactly, yes.
Yes. Well, these fragments are compiled are compiled somehow, how should I say, semi-automatically, let's say. There's a lot of knowledge going into them, and it's not really straightforward, I'm afraid.
So it's just splitting the molecule based on the functional groups, or
Well, it, the chemotypes are derived with a toxicity endpoint in mind, so it's not it's not simply mechanically splitting the molecule. They also take into account physical chemical properties and the environment of the atoms, and it's it, it, it is quite of a process going around until actually we arrive at a chemotype. So
so is
I'm
there a
afraid.
specific tool you guys are using to make those fragments or not?
Sorry.
Is there any specific tools which you use to derive those fragments and then use the knowledge base to filter that further?
Uh, well, yeah, yes, this is the chemotyper application, which is publicly available. At this moment, it allows you to read chemotypes, but in the future, it will also contain an editor, which will hopefully make it more available to everyone.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that question. I'm how are you doing, Mark, on time? Do you have maybe time for one or two more questions, or?
I do, yes, yes. It's the end of the day here,
Okay.
so.
Okay. Let me see. I think we have okay, one quick question. Does the database currently include predictive data, or is it experimental data only in it?
At the moment, it is all experimental data. One of the updates this year will be a predictive capacity, so predict basic phys chem properties and so forth.
Okay. There's a couple of questions about downloading data. I think you mentioned that the data may be able to be downloaded in the future, but it's not currently a tool or something that you can do.
Yeah, that's right. It's certainly our intention at the completion of the Cosmos project that the individual data sets and databases can be, will be made available, for instance, as a text file or as a Excel file. But we're not in a position to do that yet. And the other issue, of course, will be with data sets such as the oral data, actually getting that into a format that can be downloadable into something like Excel, simply because of the depth of data and the complexity of that data, which is really why one needs to go to this level of database to be able to store those effects and those types of data.
Okay. I have a couple of people with, or one person with a raised flag, and you're called Christy Sullivan too. I know that's not your name, but I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you. If you have a raised flag and you want to ask your question, go ahead now. Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know how else to identify you. All right, and we have any other? Oh, okay. Here's a nice compliment. Looks great. Looks like a great database. And one final question I'm gonna raise. Can you describe where the skin penetration data is coming from and when it will be available?
Yes, the skin penetration data. First answer is they will be available in the next update, which is due June, July this year. 2014. The data from the Editox database, which was been kindly donated by Professor Faith Williams at the University of Newcastle in England, which was a previous European Union project. They've been supplemented by an update to Editox, which has been donated by Taravat Ghafourian from the Medway School of Pharmacy in Kent in England, and also through quite a lot of data harvesting, which has been undertaken in Cosmos. So, and I should have written the numbers down. I think we've got skin penetration and absorption data for over 380 compounds for numerous endpoints. So if you're in the area, then you'll be familiar with the skin permeability coefficient, maximal flux, percentage absorption. So it will be a large data set, and it will build on the current databases and data sets. And we've included that. It was never part of the original Cosmos project, but it's come out. It's been required as part of the root-to-root extrapolation, particularly with respect to the TTC and whether the TTC for oral data is protective of the dermal root. That, as I say, is probably a story for another day.
Okay. Well, I think we'll stop there. I really apologize if we weren't able to get to your question. I think probably some of you might be on the phone, and I can't unmute you specifically because I don't know what number you're calling from. And so if you have additional questions, we have a lot of people on the line. There's a lot of interest in this. Please feel free to either contact me or Mark by email, and you can get your question answered that way. Thank you again, Mark, so much for the presentation, and thank you everybody for participating. Again, my name is Christy Sullivan, and I can be reached at kssullivan@ascctalks.org. And I think that's it.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for everyone for your interest and your questions, and we welcome further questions, but I suspect we might get a few, so it may take a day or two to get back to all of you, but we will make the slides available one way or the other. But thank you all.
And a recording of the webinar will be available as well. So, okay, thank you all. I'm going to end the meeting now, and have a nice day, everyone.